Well, witnesses have begun to testify in the federal racketeering and sex trafficking trial of music mogul Sean Diddy Combs.
And yesterday, the jury of 8 men, 4 women heard graphic testimony from a male sex worker. He described details of an alleged sexual encounter that he had with Sean Diddy and his girlfriend, Cassie Ventura. Joining us right now with more on the trial, what's expected today, Attorney Jason Goldman. Nice to have you back here, Jason.
Nice to be here.
All right, let's talk about Cassie Ventura. She's expected to take the stand. I'm sure they're going to show that video. Hard to get that out of your head.
Yeah, we've all seen the video. Now she's 8 months pregnant. It's going to be emotional testimony, high-powered, and, you know, from September of last year, right, the prosecution has been kind of waving this video around, and the defense has had to try to counteract it. So that will be on display today.
All right, so does domestic violence fit in with any of the charges that Diddy is facing?
Look, it does and it doesn't, right? There's no single assault charge against her necessarily, but as part of sex trafficking and as part of what the government is saying, that he forced her to do certain things, that he threatened her, that he kidnapped certain people, including her, it does fall into it. And the whole idea is that she felt that she could not get away from this person, and we saw a video where she couldn't physically get away. Now, does that span 5, 8, 10 years that they were in a relationship for? Could be a different level that they have to prove for that.
Look, we're one day in the testimony in what the judge told the jurors to expect to be about 8 weeks. So there's a long way to go, a lot of testimony. So we're speculating with a lot of things. I want to ask you just in general about some of the nonverbal messages that may be being sent in the courtroom. You know, like the family walking out. Him having gray hair and wearing a sweater, people saying to look more sympathetic, those kinds of things. Are those messages being sent to the jury, you think?
They are. I mean, it's all about optics, right? They have to humanize him. And to go along with that, you know, in terms of the actual messages, right, look at opening statements and look at how his defense team, an excellent group of lawyers, tried to humanize him, right? His upbringing, what he built for himself, a lawful business that he built for himself is the term that they used. And ultimately, using the prosecution's evidence, the video, and the other salacious details, and owning it, right? That's what's most important, is trying to gain credibility and say to the jury, the more the prosecution waves this around in your face, the less confident they feel about the actual charges here of RICO and sex trafficking. And that's what they tried to do. Of course, it helps that his family's in the room. You know, he's overweight, he has gray hair, and they're trying to play that up.
Do we read anything into the balance of the jury, 8 men, 4 women?
I don't think so. That's somewhat of an even split. You know, you can say that for the defense. It's a bit better that, you know, there's more men on the jury, but, you know, there were jury consultants involved in this. There was mock jury, so I think they brought it down to a science, and ultimately, I think they have unbiased, you know, clear-minded jurors that are going to listen to the evidence.
Would it be beneficial for Diddy to take the stand?
It's hard. I think jurors want to hear from a defendant in a lot of cases. If he was able to get up there and tell a really compelling, honest, credible life narrative about himself and be able to hold himself during cross-examination, it could go a long way. It's really early to tell. That's the last decision that you make in a case after 8 weeks of evidence. And a lot of his story is going to come out through other witnesses, so you might not need to put him on. But it's very premature to think about that. But at the same time, it's one of the first things you do think about in a case.
So, you know, there's a lot of talk about the freak-offs and the baby oil and stuff like that. But, hey, the Times has done New York, you know, stories front page about polyamorous relationships and thruples. And, I mean...
Yeah, the defense is saying that this was a consenting relationship, that people that came in flew in voluntarily, that they were adults, that they could make their own decisions, that they could have left, they could have called the police, they could have told somebody, right? None of those things happened. So, and again, the defense harped on it during opening statements. They said this is a private sex life in a private room, and now the government is taking you into that room, and they want you to, you know, impose your morality on some of these decisions that Sean Combs and other people were making together. You know, whether it's something that you would engage in or not, this is what they were doing, and it's their private life. And the defense is definitely playing up that theme, and you see it in some of these types of trials where they say, you know, who's the federal government to decide, you know, what goes on behind closed doors, if that's, you know, free and voluntary or not. Because in the moment, it seemed like it might have been, right? The male escort yesterday testified on cross-examination, and he said it seemed like she was enjoying herself.
Wow.
But if you've been around a victim of domestic violence, sometimes they are forced to do things to feel like they've got to protect themselves. And that's the argument that the prosecution makes.
And I think that's the overarching argument for the prosecution in this case is the power dynamic. Who Sean Combs was versus these other people. $500 male escort, Cassie, whose career was, hardly beginning at that point, and other people versus Sean Combs, one of the most powerful people in America in any industry, and that's the difference, right? They didn't feel that they could have left, and that's what the government's going to say.
If this is like an 8-week trial, like how much of it, because the prosecution gets to present their case first,
yes,
then the defense rebuts, like how long should we expect? 2, 3 weeks, 3, 4 weeks, that long?
It seems like the judge is moving things along. Opening statements were done by around noon yesterday. Witnesses are on and off the stand. Cassie apparently is going to testify today, so I think it's going to be a bit shorter than what the estimation is. And then, yes, the defense would have to decide what type of case to present, which witnesses, does Sean Combs testify, but I do think things are going to move along. It is interesting that they came out swinging the way they did, right? Sometimes the main witness you save for the end. You want it to be the last thing that the jury hears before closing arguments, but sometimes you do it right off the bat. And now the jury for the rest of the trial might be reverting back to this very first witness, the most salacious video that they have. That's in their mind for every single witness moving forward now.
Do we know that's the most salacious? Because there's all that talk about that he kept a treasure trove of videos. So
I think in terms of video, this will probably be the one, but in terms of salacious details, the papers say that more is going to come out in terms of potential drug use, in terms of potential violence. So it's going to be, look, the graphics are going to be there throughout the case. The defense is going to try to harp back on the elements of RICO and racketeering and consent and say you have to separate the two.
Jason Goldman, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Defense attorney here in New York City.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.